Hello, everyone, and welcome to Elan Vitae Magazine featured artist interview. I am so excited to be here with Michael Giordano, who is a nature and landscape photographer and does absolutely incredible work. I cannot wait to dive in with him about his creative process, how he came to be this incredible photographer, and what he does to inspire himself and others through that medium. So, welcome, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I'm so curious. I'd love to hear just about your journey into photography and how that became your medium of choice to express yourself.
I'd say I've always liked to be outside, but I wouldn't do the typical things. I don't really hunt or fish, but I do like hiking, and I've always been into art. And my dad always tried to get me into painting, and I think it was just one of those things where photography was just less of a mess. So I gravitated towards that, and I always, growing up with computers, I think working with Adobe Photoshop, in school projects and everything, I always had an interest in editing and how that worked, and just everything kind of came together. It was a blend of being able to go do things, take a camera with you, edit, and like I said earlier, just I liked the art aspect, I like the technology aspect, so. And then one thing just led to another, and I just kept getting deeper and deeper into it.
Wonderful. So I have to ask for all the equipment junkies out of there. What do you shoot with? What's your primary camera, lenses, things that are your go-to that
Uh,
you like to shoot with?
the first camera I got was a Canon uh, T2i, and that's their starter. That was probably the first like serious removable lens. So I stuck with Canon since once you buy into a camera system, you're pretty much stuck. But I've always shot Canon as my main uh, body and lens. I do have other things like I got a little Sony crop sensor just for video, and then I just hardly ever I force myself to use it from time to time, but then it's like tricky matching colors, so I just end up shooting the Canon anyway. But so I use that if I go biking or if I'm in the woods and or on the beach and I don't want to ruin my camera, I'll take a GoPro. And then a lot of my shots in the air are on a DJI Mavic 2 Pro. Yeah. I always mess up whether it's a Pro 2 or 2 Pro, but it's the older Mavic 2 Pro. So, a few different cameras, but mainly I'd say if you're on my Instagram, you're probably looking at the Canon and the Mavic 2. So,
Well, and so much of it is, beyond the equipment, there's the perspective and the intention behind what you're capturing. And it doesn't take anyone very long after a scroll through your Instagram to realize that you have a really strong relationship with nature. And so tell me about that, your relationship with nature and how it inspires you, or what you're shooting and when, and um how that kind of inspires or influences you.
um, I would say where I live, it's all around. And so it's a great benefit because I remember listening to a podcast or YouTube video years ago, and they made a good point is when you go visit a place, usually the best photos of that place are taken by locals because they can always be there when the conditions are great. And I feel like light has a lot to do with good landscape photography. So I'm lucky that I don't have to drive very far to get to some really great places. And so it was just one of those things where I was already doing that because this is home. And so it just got to the point where I had a camera with me, and then I would take photos, and then obviously they wouldn't turn out how I wanted to turn out. And so I'd just start researching how these people take photos, and it just kept building. But yeah, I would say the whole nature aspect of it came first, and it's just easy. Yeah, I've taken photos of people before, and I like doing that because that's always different. But landscape's just easy. You don't have to worry about
Mm.
too many things. Can take your time for the most part, and just wait around for the light to change. And
That's an amazing point, is you don't think about those things of how you have to anticipate the light or the conditions or the weather or what's happening, and
hmm
having it in your backyard can make a difference of your accessibility of being able to kind of optimize those conditions that you want to be able to capture. So that's a really
that's, I would
beautiful.
say it's probably the most frustrating part about when you travel, is that you're usually on a schedule and you're at places at the worst time of day, like midday harsh light. And
Yeah.
I feel like I always think to myself, I wish I had like a van that I could just like hang out in until like the sun starts to go down. And but yeah, I'd say a lot of, the Pennsylvania photos I get, it's just because I'm here 24/7, and it's like that thing where I know where the sun's gonna be at. And so it's a bit, I feel like it's a kind of an advantage, wherever you're at, and you live, you can probably get, some really good photos of it if you just pay attention and learn the surroundings.
Yeah. Well, that's a really good point. But also, you seem to get around pretty well. You are not limited just to where you live. You seem to capture beach and mountains and different seasons and the moon and East Coast, West Coast. I've seen so many of your really wonderful captures that I'm curious whether your travel inspires the photography, or your photography is inspired by the travel. Like sort of which comes first? Do you travel so you can take pictures, or do you take pictures because you're already planning to be there?
I'd say both. I'd say mainly though, it's worked out to where I just like take my camera along. Yeah, I'm usually visiting family a lot, so if I'm traveling, down the coast or on some family vacation, I'll take my camera, and if we're at the beach, I'll wake up for a sunrise, or, wait for a sunset. But there's only been maybe two or three trips where it's been a dedicated, like I want to go there to take uh, photos. So I think I went somewhere, I went to Colorado pre-pandemic in 2019 to take photos, and that was a really great trip. And then just got back from New England. But where we're at, we're really lucky too. We have so many good places that you can get to even in a day trip. Like I'm
Mm.
almost embarrassed to say I live, 2 hours from Letchworth State Park, and I've never been there until a few years ago. But it's one of the best places. It was ranked, I think, the best state park in America in 2017 or whatever. But we have, the Finger Lakes. There's so many great places in Pennsylvania to go to that if you just plan it out, it's almost like travel photography in itself. We're pretty lucky up here.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of your shots take on a bit of an adventurous bent. I've seen you on mountain bikes and hiking trails and things. What's the most adventurous shot that you've gotten, or the adventurous thing you've done to capture the moment in photography?
Probably last week, two places. So I'm scared to death of heights.
Okay.
I was in New Hampshire, and there's this trail called it's Table Rock. It's either Tabletop Rock or Table Rock, but it's a half-mile trail up to this flat rock. It's like 800 feet elevation, and you just go out on the ledge, which I couldn't bring myself to do. So I got the best shots I could get. That's why I have a drone. I don't do well with heights, but that was probably one of the most scary experiences because I've always wanted to do like on my bucket list is Zion and that Angel's Landing trail, which I made peace with myself. I don't have that one in me. But I'd say that, and then I drove up Mount Washington and basically had a snowstorm at the top. So you're on those like mountain roads that are very narrow, and it just turns into a whiteout really fast and ends up turning around. But I'd say those are like the two craziest things I've done, or the
Yeah.
only times where I felt like I was kind of putting myself a little extra risk to get a shot. But most of the time, I'm pretty conservative. I don't do too much to try to get something above and beyond what other people are doing. It's just not that worth it to me.
Right. There's so much of that extreme influencer, falling off a cliff because I have to have that perfect photo thing. And I've never felt that about your photos. When I scroll through your feed, I feel this sense of adventure that you take people along with you in a way that's really inspiring. And that's why I was curious kind of what you were feeling as you were doing those things that are a little more adventurous, because I feel like I find them inspiring. I'm sure other people do too, but not in a way that makes me feel scared or like that's an idealistic shot. It's like there's a beautiful experience that you have not only had for yourself, but you've also captured beautifully in the form of a photo. And I think that really radiates through your work and what makes it seem and feel very authentic. And so that's where that question sort of was born from.
Okay.
But what is it that you hope people feel when they experience your work?
Uh, I don't know. I ask myself that from time to time, but I, I don't really think about it too much or get that deep into it. I know when most people take photos, they have intent and things, and I'd say most of the time I take a photo, it's just because I really enjoy how the light looks or the colors or just like very basic, simple things. And mainly just to keep a memory of it. Like I like going through my own feed and seeing things that I've done. I'd say if I had to inspire people to do anything, it would just be to get out and do things that you enjoy. And if you want to capture it and make it look cool, then do it. And if not, that's okay too. I think that's one of the things that I used to, when I first started doing this too, is I always felt like I needed to make everything look perfect and, fit, the Instagram style photo. And anymore, it's just like, now I fight harder to get out of habits of what everybody else is doing, which is hard to do because I feel like there's so many photos that eventually you're going to look like somebody else's photos and everything. So I'd say just go and do what you're already doing and enjoy it and, not think about it too much. But yeah, if
Mhm.
you're coming to my like page and you're thinking for deep messages and everything like that, you probably won't find it.
Well, I
Yeah.
think, that's kind of the interesting thing is like your images don't really require a lot of words, like they stand alone, and the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It's your shot, and what you captured and what your intention was could mean something totally different to somebody else. But I think there's something that carries through in your appreciation of the moment that, I don't know, it's just kind of imbued in that shot. And I feel like that is what gives people permission to then appreciate those things as well for whatever they mean to them. And so that's kind of what has really struck me about your work. Um, is there anywhere that you haven't been yet that you would like to capture through your lens?
I would like to go out west. I haven't been out west too much. I went to Colorado for a few days, but I'd really like to do a little western road trip and hit some national parks like Zion. Banff would be on my list of places that I'd like to go see. I've always wanted to go to Iceland for the auroras. Uh, but that would probably be my, like, if I had to pick top three, I know there's a lot of exotic places and everybody's trying to go where nobody else has gone, and those are probably all played out. But growing up here, I like seeing mountains because in Pennsylvania, especially where we're at, is I tell people all the time it's hard to see more than like a few hundred yards out in front of you, whether it's the hills or the trees. There's not really open spaces. So when
Yeah.
I visit places where it's just wide open, it's very different for me, and I like it. So
Yeah.
I do like being on mountaintops because even around here we have hills, but it's still you're still limited. There's still so many trees around, and
Yeah,
they're
you're in
pretty,
it rather
but
than looking at it from afar.
yeah. So I'd say out west would be like my if I had to go somewhere tomorrow and keep it simple. And that's another
Yeah.
thing. I like keeping things simple too. Like I don't like flying and all the headaches that go with it. Like yeah, I would prefer to be able to drive everywhere. So a lot of that dictates things too. If I can just like pack a bunch of gear, and I'm terrible at packing, so I usually pack too much, but I'll just load everything into a car, and then if I can drive around to places, that would be ideal. So,
Yeah, and then you might have a destination in mind, but you just never know what you might encounter along the way.
no.
Could be an amazing treasure too.
Yeah, some of
So
my favorite photos are just pulling over and getting a shot and then going on. And a lot of the times I don't like I'll take a picture and I don't know how it'll do until I start kind of messing around with it. Uh,
yeah.
like from my New England trip, of all the photos that I've posted, I think the one people like the most is one that I pulled over for like 30 seconds where I took a picture and then just kept driving.
Isn't that amazing? So amazing.
So,
I love that. Oh,
yeah,
this is, I love just getting to connect to your creative process and what inspires you. And no matter what someone's medium is, I feel like they can draw from what drives somebody else and what fuels somebody else and what has inspired or what they've allowed to come through them creatively. And so I would love to know what advice you might offer to someone who wanted to get started in photography or was thinking about, hey, how do I get better at this? Where do I start to go learn? Or how do I start to express myself creatively, whether it's photography or not?
I would say learn lighting because
Mm,
anymore people do focus on gear, and I think gear does matter quite a bit. I'm not going to be one of those that say gear doesn't matter. It's like anything else. If you have nice gear, it helps out tremendously. But you always see, whenever we have new phones come out, like a new iPhone, they'll always show you a commercial, and they are shot on iPhones, but the lighting is very professional, and
yeah.
so of course it's going to look nice. And if you take a very nice camera out midday, and you start taking photos, it's going to look just like how you would take it on your iPhone. Where gear matters is when you start to get into, I would say, like different lighting situations that you need something with a bigger sensor that can let more light in or whatever. So I would say if you get into it, you can figure out the type of stuff you like doing and not doing. Like I personally like editing. A lot of people don't like it. They just want to take photos and do that. Or if you're working with people, you have to understand like what makes people look good as opposed to landscape, and you're going to need different equipment. Like I feel like lenses are much more important than the camera body. And then I feel like there's kind of if you have to go down a list of what is important, I'd say it's first lighting, and then it would be the lens, and then the camera body, and then if you start getting into like the artistic side of it, there's color theory and all that, and complementary colors, which I try to do sometimes, but most of the time I'm not that well thought out to sit there and think, okay, well, you know, purple, if you wear something purple, it's going to look good against the green in the woods.
Right,
But a lot of
right, yeah.
people, you know, and I will say too, is one thing that, and this will probably not be popular in like the photography community, but I always feel like presets are kind of way overblown. Like a lot of people make money doing that, and I think that is great. But at the same time, what they don't tell you is like those presets usually only work in certain lighting conditions again. If you apply
Yeah.
their presets, you know, midday, they're not going to look good at all. It's not going to transform your photo. But then at the same time, if you start really understanding that, then you probably don't need the preset. So, but they are good. Like, like I use, like I develop presets and I just like will apply it, and then most of the time I'll just get frustrated and start over. Um, but I would say, yeah, I'd say learn lighting, um, and then if you think you like it, then I would get more expensive gear. It's just like anything else. Like you can, I would say if you're gonna, you know, mow the lawn, you can do it with a push mower, or you can do it with a big rider. They'll do the same thing. Well, it's just going to be a lot easier to do it with. So,
Right. Yeah,
um,
absolutely. It's okay to start with the training wheels and then, take them off and
yeah,
then upgrade and all that. Yeah, no, that's really great advice and very thorough actually for somebody who's thinking about doing it, and great to have that perspective. I'm so happy we got to have this conversation today. Where can people find you? Your Instagram is the primary location
hmm
for your photography, right? What is your Instagram handle if people want to find you and check out your work?
my full name and middle initial. So it'd just be Michael C. Giordano, which I know is not an
Excellent.
easy handle.
That's okay. We'll make sure it's written with this video and with your article so that people can come and check out your work. I hope that they will. I hope you guys will visit Michael C. Giordano on it's MichaelCgiordano on Instagram. Check out his incredible landscape and nature photography. Mike, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story, for your inspiration on creativity, and just sharing your work with the world.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
My pleasure. Take care.